Hello, how you doing? Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. And welcome to another Nemorin Live here on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube and Twitch. Still hanging in there with Twitch and just about everywhere else. It's great to have you here. We're having such a manic week here at Nemorin Film Video because we have our huge annual event coming up in just a couple of days, and we're just putting the final tweaks of that together. If you want tickets, by the way, just head to brandedcontent.com. It's on Thursday. I think Tom will know. You'll meet Tom in a moment. But yeah, it's coming up in a few days. If you want tickets, brandedcontentday.com is the place to go to. But today we're talking about a project that we worked on not so long ago. I think it was probably about 18 months ago, something like that. For SOS Children's Villages. It was a global campaign, a mixture of digital and broadcast, and I think there was some out-of-home content as well. In case you don't know, SOS Children's Villages are a global charity which is looking to promote children who have lost parental care or who are at risk of losing it. So a really interesting and amazing project for us to be involved in. It was quite complicated because it was involved filming overseas and working with children, and that presents various challenges, and we're going to be talking today about some of those challenges and how we ended up with the amazing piece of content or suite of content that we did, and a very happy client as well, which is great. So yeah, we'll be talking about casting, and we're kind of working with children, filming in the UK and overseas, and also making the UK look like it was overseas, and lots of other interesting points as well. And joining us today, we've got two experts who were involved in that project. Hello to Tom and Jack. Tom is one of our producers who you may have met before, and Jack is an award-winning director and directed this piece of content for us. Perhaps, Tom, you can quickly introduce yourself and give us an overview of what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tom. You might remember me. Sounds a bit like Troy McClure from The Simpsons when I do that, isn't it? You might remember me from such LinkedIn Lives as a few others that we've done over the last year. But I'm one of the producers here at Nemorin. So I was kind of the first point of contact for the client on this project, and I suppose instrumental in pulling everything together and making sure that Jack could execute his creative vision seamlessly.
And Jack, obviously you worked on this project, but you work on all sorts of amazing campaigns. Maybe give us a quick 30-second kind of background on your story.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Jack. So I directed this campaign with the guys, as they said. Yeah, I've been directing for over 15 years now. All sorts of things. I used to specialize in sport, but since 2018 branched out a little bit, and I've been working on various car commercials and commercials for Bupa, PayPal, Land Rover, amongst some others. But yeah, this was a great project to be involved in, and yeah, we're looking forward to talking a bit more about it.
And it was fantastic working with you on this project, and yeah, we're looking forward to having a bit of a deeper dive into everything that was happening behind the scenes. So thank you guys for being here. But first of all, let's actually have a look at the final piece of content. So let's have a look at that. go. First question is actually to Tom. So, Tom, this is quite a big project to execute. Where do you start with something like this?
That's a good question. Yeah, there was obviously a lot of moving parts in this, but I suppose we started with the initial brief from the client. So they came to us and said, this is the kind of thing that we want to do, and this is the reason why we want to do it. So we all put our heads together, came up with a few options, and once they sort of all agreed on what would be the best approach creatively, that was when we started scripting. And we brought Jack in pretty much from day one to make sure that he was on the same page as everyone, and Jack worked on the script. And it was just a case of back and forth before we'd even decided where we were going to be filming or who we were going to be filming. It was a case of what is the message, what is the story, what is happening in this 60-second video, basically.
So, and would you agree, Jack, that like everything starts with a script, and I suppose the why, is that where you approach these things?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was a slight script there to begin with, but obviously then I developed that. I do some creative writing as well, so I developed the script and sort of, you know, tried to turn it into a bit more of an emotionally captivating piece. And it was all about sort of promoting the strength, courage and resilience of these children around the world. And that's a point there that, you know, this is a global charity. So there was obviously touch points where the charity wanted to get across that it was a global charity throughout. So yeah, really it was all about heroing kids and showing that they're not invisible to SOS Children's Villages, and they see them, and yeah, they help them.
Yeah, so sort of casting my mind back, as part of the process of working with the new client, we had an initial top line idea as to how the content could play out. That's obviously where you then got involved and you kind of developed that baseline ideas. Is that a way that you like working, or is every case?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it varies from project to project. Sometimes, you know, a creative agency might have taken 6, 7, 8 months to craft the creative, and it's very set in stone what I'll need to produce and what I'll need to bring to life cinematically. In this case, it was slightly different. There was more scope for me to get my imagination at work and you know, and give some suggestions. And it was all about collaboration really with Tom and yourself, and Ford, the client there. And I think straight away we all got a good working relationship together. And it was, you know, like any project, it's all for the main greater good really. Everyone's working for that cause. So it was all about coming up with ideas and figuring out which ones would work, figuring which ones we could fit within the budget, and would work on shooting on the same day and things like that. So yeah, lots of things, but obviously ultimately making sure that the client was happy with what was being proposed, and then yeah, bringing that to life.
And a second ago, we were looking at the storyboard, some shots from a storyboard a moment ago. Can you sort of explain the benefit of having the storyboard, and also how literal are they? Are you literally saying it's going to be this close and this sort of angle and so on, or is it more kind of top line? Yeah,
I'd say it's more to give a flavour of the types of scenes we're looking to do, the type of framing that I'd like to shoot. Nothing would be necessarily set in stone. But then I always like to cut an animatic. So just to give an idea of pace of the edit. So everyone's got an idea when we're shooting how long these shots are actually going to be on scene for. Because I found over the years you can get bogged down sometimes on a shot that's only ever going to be a second. So it's important to get that performance, to know what you need from that performance. But I think it's just clarity. You know, people spending lots of money on this, clients are spending lots of money on commercials and branded content and whatnot. So people need to know exactly what's being done. And then I like to use that as a sort of Bible for the shoot, really. So people can refer back to that and, you know, really know what's being shot, and where it's going to fit within the film. Because this film did have a few different parts to it, really, which sort of tonally were very different. So it was important for people to know that as well from the off. Yeah.
Sorry, I was only smiling when you were talking there because my phone rang. So yeah, just from a perspective of kind of working with children, that adds extra layers of complexities. And obviously, given in mind obviously what the client does for a living, do you want to talk to us a little bit in terms of how you approach that?
Yeah. So obviously I've got experience working with children, which is one of the reasons why you guys reached out to me. So I think for me, it's all about keeping things as simple as possible, especially with the age of the children that we were working with, which from memory, I think was sort of 5 to 10 was the oldest, but there was quite a few kids that were sort of 5 and 6. So, and then you've got the language barrier as well with the shoot that we did abroad. So always keep things simple. The storyboards really help. Kids love stories. Kids love to see visual things. So if you can show them that you've drawn them already, and this is what we're filming to make, bring you to life and make you a star and things like that, then it's great. I also think it's great to have a skeleton crew. Keep as few people on set as possible. Obviously, people get nervous. Adults get nervous on set, so children are more likely to. So be a friendly face. Only one voice. I like it if only I'm speaking to the person, because too many things and it can get very confusing. But just keep things nice and simple. What you're asking them to do in terms of a performance, keep it nice and stripped back, and yeah, just nice and natural, really. And the kids were fantastic. They were so good. Pleasure to work with all of them, and yeah, it was good. We got exactly what we wanted.
Okay, great. And just a quick reminder, by the way, if you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat box on whichever platform you happen to be watching at the moment. I'm sure the guys will be very happy to do their best to answer your really hard questions. And actually, we're going to be speaking in a second about finding the right locations, but maybe a question here for both of you in terms of the kind of rules and regulations for filming with children, particularly the school age. What are the considerations there, maybe, Jack, that you need to kind of take on board in terms of, health and safety and so on?
Yeah, well, obviously there's time constraints. Children can't be on set for too long. They need breaks every now and then. So that's really down to Tom and the first AD to keep on top of all of that. Because obviously I've got a lot of things on my mind on the shoot day and focusing on capturing what we need to bring this film to life cinematically. So that would be a question I'd sort of pass over to Tom, and on the day I'd speak to Tom and the first AD about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jack. It was a case of we were fortunate in the sense that the scenes that involved children were all quite short, and we were getting through a lot each day. So the kids were not needed for a long time, but definitely working hours. Something that needs to be a big consideration. Also chaperones. I think many of the kids were there with their parents, and if not, then they needed to be with a sort of a licensed BCD checked chaperone. And yeah, I mean, I just echo Jack's sentiments in terms of making it as comfortable as possible. Commercial shoots can be quite kind of intense environments, particularly when you're on a tight timeline. So keeping the kids away from that is really important, and it gets better performances out of them as well. If everyone's backs, then everyone works better.
Yeah, and I think also just in terms of performance there, I always like the kids to see the camera before they're on set, so then they're not fascinated with it when they're on set, and it's just a little thing really. Just let them see it first off on the day when we're setting up, really, so they get over that wow of seeing the big camera and the lenses and meeting people as well, just so then when they are on set, they're as comfortable as can be, really.
Absolutely fascinating. And Tom, one of the tasks you had was finding locations, obviously working with Jack, but to find locations both in the UK and overseas. And from memory, you needed a UK location that was very versatile, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah. So, I mean, part of the brief was to showcase the diversity of the countries that the client works in, and the diversity and the kind of the global scale of the whole project. So we needed to represent certain spread of countries. So some from Europe, from South America, from Africa, from Asia. Now, ideally, in an ideal world, what we'd love to do is go and shoot in all of these countries. But logistically, that becomes a huge thing. It becomes very expensive. It becomes very time-consuming, and obviously everybody has deadlines and budgets and things like that. So what we did was we ended up splitting the shoot into 3. So we did 2 shoot days were in London, in locations which we could then double as different countries. So I think it was 2 houses in the end, and we had to choose houses where we could go into different rooms and dress them and make them look like they were in totally different countries. And then the second part of the shoot was traveling abroad, and we basically did the same thing in a different country. So it was all about dressing up. It's what filmmaking is all about, which is pretending that one thing is something else. So yeah, it was a difficult challenge to find the right locations, but we spent about a day, I think, wasn't it, Jack? Yeah. Going around loads of different houses in London with it was myself and Jack and the first AD and the gaffer and all the kind of heads of departments to make sure that that each location had the right attributes for us and could give us what we needed for the shoot.
Yeah, and also just following off on the back of that quickly, I think working with us with the art department and getting lots of references beforehand, so that the client there weren't any surprises on the day. So the client knew which rooms were going to be dressed as which in the pre-production meeting we were doing, making sure that the colour palettes worked to the country that we were supposed to be replicating, to try and keep it as authentic as possible, which I think worked. So yeah, it was team effort as always.
And Tom, we work very closely with the clients as well, and the international divisions of the clients to get their inputs on the sort of really finite detail of each location, down to those are the right type of curtains that would represent my country, those are the right type of plates, those aren't the right type of plates, and so on.
Yeah,
that detail is important, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, I mean this it's not a fiction film, although the scenes that we invented were dressed, they were produced, they were rehearsed with actors. They obviously reflect real people in real situations in real countries, so we needed it to be as authentic as possible. If you're in a specific country, if you're in Lithuania, for example, and you see on a video or on a film that somebody is in a kitchen which is supposed to take place in Lithuania, but the plug sockets are very obviously British plug sockets, you're going to notice that, and it's going to take you away from the experience of watching the film. So to kind of make it immersive and to do these regions justice, we needed to get that right. So it was literally down to that fine detail of plug sockets, light switches, the kind of the curbing around doors, or people wouldn't have door handles like that. So it was very much a case of keeping all of the different regions in the loop, sending photos, and that was the kind of feedback that we were getting, which was incredibly valuable. And hopefully at the end of the project, we have achieved that and done those local regions justice.
Yeah. And I guess there's only so much you can do. A lot here in the UK, but there's only so much you can do, particularly for wide shots and deserts and that kind of stuff. So Jack and Tom, you went over to Jordan as well for a couple of key scenes, didn't you?
Yeah, so that's Jordan's an area where they've got SOS have got a large presence. So there was from the business side of things, there was a sort of wish for us to go there. So we went there. Obviously, as you can see on the screen here, there's some beautiful locations where we shot. But again, we shot various locations there, interiors and exteriors. Performances from the children were excellent. We obviously had a translator and a sort of local fixer there who was great. But yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I mean, I've shot all over the world before, and the crews here were all good. We took the DOP with us. We also took the same lens set with us that we shot on in the UK, so that the film would have continuity, so it didn't suffer for shooting around the world. It was all shot in the same style and with the same equipment, and yeah, it was a good experience, and we got some fantastic performances from the kids out there. And again, another just going back to the animatic, another picture speaks 1,000 words. So to show a child this is what you're going to be doing, is great. Like, I don't need to ramble on. I just show them what we're going to be doing today and on this shot. And some of the kids there, they've never been in front of the camera before, but they were excellent. And all liked seeing the final product when we showed some shots back at the end of the day.
I bet they did. Yeah. And sometimes, obviously, the little trick of the trade is actually using stock footage to kind of fill gaps. Not ideal, but in some situations that will work. We've got a question here from Amy Osborne. Hi, Amy. Good to hear from you. Did we use any stock footage in the campaign? Maybe Jack, you can answer that one.
No, not as far as I'm aware. We've shot everything that was in this campaign. At some stage, there was a conversation around that about shooting all of the interiors in the UK and then buying stock footage for the abroad shots. But for authenticity, the client really wanted, myself and all of us really wanted to shoot somewhere that showed that it wasn't in the UK, because even though it's being made by a UK production company, it's a global piece of work, which is the company is has got presence all over the world. So it's it was I think necessary that we went to this location.
And Tom, logistically filming in Jordan, do you want to touch on the complexities and the nuances between filming in London basically and Jordan?
Yeah, I mean it's a whole thing. I think the main thing is that obviously I'm based in London, I live in London, I work in London every day, so I'm very familiar with crews. I've got a large network of people that I can rely on if something goes wrong at the last minute. I know I've got an endless list of people that I can call to help me. I know the regulations and the rules and how to go about getting permits and things like that. Jordan's a new country for me. I've never been there. Obviously I have now, but I hadn't at the time. And I didn't have any of those details. So fortunately we had the number of a fixer in Jordan who we obtained through our network because we're our global production company, and then that person was the person that I then worked very closely with to sort out permits and locations, and I was just in constant contact with them basically. So the WhatsApp video was really great. They spent a day, an evening, going around different locations, texting me photos, being like, what about this one? What about that one? And obviously I worked very closely with Jack on deciding what would be the best approach. So it was really a case of relying on boots on the ground, basically, which meant that when we got there, all we needed to do was take a little look at the locations ourselves, meet the kids, and then we could pretty much go straight into filming because we'd done all the heavy lifting beforehand, thanks to a great team of people who were based there locally.
Yeah, and I also think, sorry, Pete, I was just going to say, I think it's about managing expectations for a foreign shoot and not trying to put too much of a workload and try and get too much out of a day. Obviously, you've got the language barrier. You're working with foreign crews, people you've never worked with before. So that's not to say that we didn't get a lot of stuff there, but it was just to make everyone aware of, how far away the locations were from each other. It wasn't a case of 10 minutes down the road. Like going out into that desert was like an hour and a half each way. So that was obviously going to take up a chunk of the day. So it was, all about managing expectations and not over promising really. I mean, we actually got what we originally wanted to get, so more than the client was expecting. But I think that's a better way of going about it. Getting more than what you've promised to capture.
So we're going to talk about the editing process in a second, but before that, I'm picturing you guys in the middle of the desert, an hour and a half to get to wherever it was, in the middle of nowhere. You've shot everything, you're really happy. How do you get the rushes back to Ian, who's going to be editing it in Soho?
Great question. We had so I had a couple of hard drives which I loaded up, and I sent some proxies overnight using sort of shoddy hotel Wi-Fi, which was enough for him to get started with. And then I had 2 backed up hard drives. Maybe it might have even been 3, I think. And then I had one in my hold luggage and one that I clutched in my hands with me the whole time to get back on the flight. Gave him the hard drive and he could already get started. But because he had the proxies, which are much sort of lower sized files, then he could already start familiarizing himself with what we were working on.
Yeah. Better safe than sorry. We've actually put, where we've had more than one person overseas involved in the shoot, we've actually put people on different aircraft with 2 different drives. But I suppose you have to think of these things, don't you? Now, we didn't just shoot in 16:9. We actually shot in vertical as well. Jack, just talk about that process, because it's not just reversioning content like you.
So that was a big factor in this one. Really was we needed to shoot 16:9 and 9:16 because the eventual output was going to be across online and on Snapchat and Instagram, and so we had to shoot for 1:1 as well. So obviously that doubles up the time of production time and filming time. So obviously careful consideration was given to the framing and composition of each shot. It wouldn't have sufficed to shoot at 16:9 and then just crop in, because a lot of the things I wanted to see sort of the wider shots in the 16:9, just to sort of place us in those environments. So that was a case of putting the camera on its side and shooting it that way, and after we'd got the 16:9 shots. But again, that was all in the meticulous planning, and the edits were the same, but obviously you're having to then edit twice because you're having to look through new rushes all the time. So I did the 16:9 edit with Ian, and then we used that to go forward and do the 9:16, and it was good to collaborate with Ian. It's great. I mean, the way I like to work is I'll like to do the animatic and then give the rushes to the editor to do the first edit themselves, and obviously they're craftsmen and within the field of editing. So, and then collaborate with them about bringing to life how the film that I've promised to make in my treatment, really. But it's good experience.
And it is amazing seeing a camera literally on its side, going from kind of 16:9 mode to literally the camera is sideways, but you end up with a much better picture quality ultimately that way. I really enjoyed the color grading process. I thought the way that the color graders really worked with the footage and kind of ramped up the color was just extraordinary. And I guess, Jack, color grading is quite often overlooked in some ways.
I mean, it's a huge part of it. When you get the rushes back and you're used to editing in the sort of raw format, and then when it sort of zings to life when you get into the grade. I mean, for this film, we had sort of 2 different setups. We had a warm setup in the first half of the film, which is where life's happy and fantastic, and it's warm and sunny and beautiful glows, and children are getting love from their parents. But like all kids when we're little, we don't want it and we push them away, huff and puff. In comparison to the second half of the film, where it was more high contrast, and we were only sort of filling the light from one side to get bigger shadows, creating a harsh and sort of raw environment for these children, and sort of making it feel a bit uncomfortable, really, for the situations that unfortunately a lot of children have to live in. And that's why we're highlighting in this, and the different things that these children are experiencing. It had a sort of 2-pronged attack really to the grade and lighting on the day of shooting as well. But you can see on screen here the final result and how it all looks. And obviously we've got a great cast there. The kids were brilliant, and it's a very diverse cast, and that was one of the main things for children's villages, to sort of represent children from all over the world, because like I say, unfortunately there's people from all over the world in this situation.
And one of the things that you managed to execute so well was the really subtle body language from these children, because the client had a very particular request, quite rightly so, that the children should appear as being empowered and not necessarily sad or as a victim. And that's very, particularly with no dialogue, but, and there wasn't any dialogue. That's very subtle. As a director, how do you approach that, particularly working with children?
Well, I think it's these children were actors, you know, they weren't experiencing what these children have got, the people have gone through. So it was really for me about telling them, it was like telling them they're superheroes. They need to be strong, they're resilient, and you know, and it's about showing the camera that you're tough, you know, and children, you know, children who aren't actors, we're all actors. So you know, these kids were great, and they really got it, and they took my direction really well, especially in Jordan. So you know, I was just letting them do their own thing, and just a few little pointers here and there to get the performance. But like I said before, let's keep it nice and simple for them, and just one word of direction I'd usually go for. So, and then that would be translated to them via our fixer, and then we get what we want.
Fascinating stuff. We're going to be wrapping up fairly soon, and we've got the last few questions. But before that, another question here from Amy. What were the learnings from the project, and what would you do differently? Maybe Tom, you might want to start with that one.
That's a really tough question. What were the learnings? The learnings were that definitely having everything agreed to on paper and visualized beforehand is absolutely the secret to success, particularly with a highly scripted production like this. It meant that there was no scope for changing things halfway, and everything could be meticulously planned. And once we were set down that route, we didn't change it, and that was great because we didn't need to change it because everybody knew exactly what we were going for at any time. In terms of what I would do differently, to be honest, generally I'm really happy with the way that it went, and I'm really happy with all aspects of production. I think if I could do it again and we had a bigger budget, I would like to have spent probably longer filming. I think probably I would like to have split the days up a bit more and just had a little bit of more time really focusing on each individual scene. But I think, yeah, generally, I'm just really pleased with how it turned out, and everyone seems to have responded to it really well, and the client obviously liked it, which is really important, and it made a big impact. So,
and Jack,
I'd say the biggest thing for me was the music. So in terms of the filming and production, I was very happy with how it went. But there was a very different sort of tone to the sort of director's cut, which for me was more powerful. But I think this was a campaign where there was one client but multiple stakeholders from all different regions as well. That's something to sort of to bear in mind here. So it was majority rules in the end, but it was very close to being a different feel to the film, which I would have preferred. But you can't win them all.
It's amazing the difference music can make, absolutely. So yeah, kind of thinking back to this project, we had crowded houses with flying over to Jordan, blah, 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 and cut to 2020 and the world is completely different. But Jack, do you think that things are going to go back to the way they were when we were filming in houses and flying everywhere, or have things changed forever now?
I feel like Matt Hancock now. Well, hopefully they haven't changed forever. But I mean, since COVID hit, you know, there's been lots of learnings and ways of adapting, which we've all had to do. Sort of one example for me is I did a campaign where for PayPal it was, and it was all remote shooting. So we shot in Germany, in Spain, and 2 shoots in the UK, all from my house in Watford. I directed it all from Watford. So it was a really great experience. Actually, it was the client would view that, we'd all view the camera output on one feed, and then I'd talk to the client on Zoom, I talked to the producer on Skype, and I talked to the local crew on Google Hangout. So my head was a bit frazzled at the end of each day, and I had to always remember to mute the right ones at the right time. But for me, it kept everyone very focused from a client point of view on what was being filmed. So I'd explain before we set the camera up, I'd say, right, we're going to shoot the scene in the street with the girl running down the street. So everyone would be aware of what we're doing. I'd then go on mute, we'd shoot that scene, and I'd then go back in once I was happy with the scene and thought I'd captured it thought we'd got at least one good take in there and then go back in. So going forward to next year, I don't see any harm in continuing to do that. Obviously, nothing beats a real thing. Like all being on set together is great, but there's definitely ways forward, and brands can definitely take confidence in getting real cinematic, high quality adverts out there. There's lots of examples out there. So yeah, it's a good string tab to the bow, and I know you guys at Nemorin have done it as well. So it's a great thing.
Yeah, 2020 has definitely forced innovation, which probably ultimately is going to be a good thing. And we're all flying less and so on. But I think you can't beat being in the room. But if you can't be in the room, technology is just incredible now. And I know, Tom, you've been working on some shoots as well, which involve remote directing for a couple of clients.
Exactly, yeah. And I just echo Jack's sentiments, to be honest. I mean, as we've said, nothing beats you being there in person, talking to the talent one-on-one. In terms of moving forward, I think shoots, unfortunately, by nature, can be not the most environmentally friendly thing because of all the travel involved, because of all the lights and things like that. I think moving forward, we might see shoots with fewer people in general. Maybe people will discover a way or realize that the skeleton shooting that they have been doing with just a handful of crew is still getting good results. So maybe we don't need to have everybody getting on a plane and going to the same place. I think remote directing works really well, as we've seen with Jack's work and seen with some of the projects that we've done recently this year. I think it also gives clients and it gives producers like me additional access to great, talented directors. I'm imagining a situation where maybe I want to film in Jordan or Australia or something like that, but maybe Jack's schedule is tied up in such a way that he's busy on another shoot and he wouldn't be able to fly there in person. Well, with remote directing, it means that he doesn't need to spend all those days before and after traveling to the location and preparing, because he can do it straight from his house. So, maybe he's just come off a shoot the next day, or maybe he's prepping on something else and he can't dedicate that time. He might be able to jump onto a Zoom call and direct that remotely. So it means I would still be able to work with Jack. It kind of opens up a lot more opportunities in terms of talent.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys for being with us today, and thank you, Jack, for your time and obviously for your kind of work on the film as well. It's been a real pleasure having you involved, and thank you for being with us today. But God, 2020, what a horrible year. But as I say, it kind of has forced new ways of doing things and new ways of thinking about working on projects and so on. And I think we can probably use that and kind of stick with it as we head into 2021 and beyond. So fingers crossed for a really good year next year. I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream from Nemorin. Don't forget, we do have our main event happening in a few days, Branded Content Day. It's our one-day celebration of all things branded content. If you would like a ticket, head over to brandedcontentday.com. They're free, but we only have a certain amount left, and it's first come, first serve. We've got a great lineup of people talking, including Lego and TUI and Sotheby's and all sorts. So it'd be great to see you there. But that's it for today. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and I'll leave you with our show reel.
Nemorin Film and Video,
the world's branded video agency.
2020 showreel.
I always wanted to be a storyteller.
I knew I wanted to do something more creative.
Something really magical.
Everything is about the rhythm.
Ow! Sheer publicity.
Okay, so the faces thing?
Yeah.
result of beauty. And you will never get bored of it.
Nemorin.